and gentlemen, welcome to Unapologetic Live. I'm your host, Amala Epinobi, and we're a little late today because the whole crew was up to something. You notice we're in our two-chair seats right here. Taylor's here. Boom.
Happy Friday.
Scott's in the producer's bay, although, there you go. You can see him. All right, guys. And we're here today, a little late, because we went and watched Nope, directed, produced, and written by none other than Jordan Peele. You guys know him as the director of both Get Out and Us, and this is his newest film. So we went and saw it this morning, went and checked it out, and you know what? I was actually kind of shocked because I thought it was going to be this super crazy woke movie, and it didn't end up being quite that. So we are going to get into that today and talk about the whole process of going to see it. When I had first seen Get Out, I thought, okay, I know exactly what we're going to get from this. This is going to be super woke. It's going to talk about white people and all this stuff and how they utilize black people. And when I went and saw it, I was actually kind of shocked. There was, of course, a lot of wokeness to that film in particular, but we also got to see a calling out of white liberals. The famous white actor who plays the dad in Get Out saying, I voted for Obama twice, just to let you know. And it's certainly multifaceted, but Jordan Peele has come out and as a director say that race informs a lot of the decisions that he makes when he's creating a film, and I think this film itself is no exception. So we're going to get into that. First, I just want to show you guys the trailer just in case you haven't heard about this film. They've been very sort of cryptic and secretive about what they put out as far as what the plot's about and how the film progresses. But let's go ahead and check out the trailer.
Did you know that the very first assembly of photographs to create a motion picture was a 2-second clip of a black man on a horse? And that man is my great-great-grandfather.
Great.
There's another great-grandfather. But that's why back at the Haywood Ranch, as the only black-owned horse trainers in Hollywood, we like to say since the moment pictures could move, we had skin in the game.
Spooky.
What's a bad miracle? They got a word for that.
Yeah, nah.
Ooh. I love a good film trailer. I can't lie. And this is a good film trailer. So for those of you who know me, you know that I do not like whatsoever. I don't like horror. And I think Taylor and Scott can speak to the fact that this was not a super horror film.
We basically had to drag you there today.
I really do not like horror movies whatsoever. I don't like blood. I don't like gore. And I think I could watch this movie all the way through and I didn't have to shield my eyes or anything
brave,
that much. I was pretty good. I did pretty good.
The best part was coming back from the bathroom and during the trailers you were looking away from the Halloween trailer that was going on.
I can't look at it. In the trailer he was trying to put her hand in the garbage disposal. No. I'm not going to sit and watch anything like that. And we're going to get into the film a little bit later in the show today, and we will get into spoilers. So I will warn you guys before we get into that, if this is a film that you are planning on going to see. So we're going to go through some spoilers later on. First, I want to react to an interview that Jordan Peele, not Jordan Peterson.
I wish it were Jordan
Well, the
Peterson.
thing about the film is that aliens are a formidable foe.
I had apple cider vinegar, and it was the most horrifying experience of my life.
The scariest thing about the film is the apple cider vinegar. Anyways, no, not Jordan Peterson. We're going to get into an interview that Jordan Peele did on the Today Show. And after that, we'll start talking about the film. So I will warn you before we get into spoilers here. Let me get this video loaded up for you guys so that you guys can see. Of course, we get the YouTube ads that we have to go through because Amala is unprepared for her own stream. But yeah, I don't do well with horror, as I was saying, and this film did not feel like a horror film. It was definitely suspenseful. It was definitely a thriller, and there might be some scenes that if you can't do a little bit of gore, you might want to look away from. But other than that, I did well. And if I can do well in this film, that means you can too. Let's get into this interview for the Today Show, see what Jordan Peele has to say.
Experience worthy of going to the movies. I read in an interview recently that you maintain this is not a film that could have been made 5 years ago. Why not? I think this idea of, letting a black director put his vision into a film and commit to it. Let's put it this way, 5 years ago, I didn't think they would ever let me do that. So much of my career before I became a director was marred with this internalized sense that I could never be allowed to do that no one would ever trust me with money, enough money to do my vision. Yeah. The way.
Pause. Okay, so there's like a lot of, here's what I have to say. We're obviously going to get into the wokeness of the film, which I don't feel as though was that woke. But because you have this in the background and what he's saying about being a director, a writer, a producer, it really does muddy the waters of watching the film. And Taylor sort of mentioned this after we got out. Like, I went in already on the edge of my seat, like waiting for the message that was going to be pushed forth in this film, waiting for the racialization of this, because we saw these interviews beforehand and we heard what Jordan Peele had to say about, being a black director and race is never separated from the things that you do. And what's interesting is Jordan Peele's pretty famous, and he's been pretty famous for quite some time. You guys probably recognize him from Key and Peele, and if not that, you know him from Get Out and his movie Us. So this idea that he could not have created this film 5 years ago. You said what? Get Out came out 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, in 2017.
So this film is obviously much higher budget than Get Out was. So maybe that's what he's speaking to. I don't think I had proven myself enough to receive the budget that I got to create a film like Nope today. But you were still creating blockbuster movies 5 years ago as a black director. And what it speaks to for me is exactly what my experience was with the idea of racism and internalizing that idea of racism. So much of the barriers set in place to your own success are barriers that you put there for yourself because of the narrative that you've been told, because of the ideas that you've accepted as an individual. And when I was younger, I had accepted that because I was black in America, things were going to be harder and people were going to judge me more than they judged other people. And that muddied the waters of my own brain and what I was able to accomplish and the things that I would go after and my confidence in going after those things. I was super unconfident. And that was one of the reasons why. So that seems to be the issue here. Like, clearly Jordan Peele is somebody who's capable of creative genius. We know that, whether it has a political message behind it or not. And because you've allowed this idea of racism to just infiltrate your mind, it's held back your own genius.
Yeah, and just to the whole point of, like, 5 years ago, no one would have trusted me with the money because black directors just can't get the access. I just quickly Googled. The budget for this film was $68 million. In 2016, Ava DuVernay, a black director, directed A Wrinkle in Time for a $100 million budget. So
it's possible.
Yeah, and like, ever heard of Spike Lee? There's lots of black directors who've done big budget films over the years. So I don't buy that point, but it's interesting that he feels the need to insert that into this narrative around his film, which is why I think we went into it with this sense of like, oh Lord, where's it coming? Where's the wokeness coming? Which, again, we'll get into it, and it wasn't really that bad, but it's just your worldview does end up going into your art, I think, and your message does come through one way or another. So,
any notes before we move on here, Scott? I know Scott's the film major among us, by the way, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely hammer down the same point that Taylor's making. there have been black directors over the years that have had large budget movies. So for him to say this is kind of just out of left field. I think it's one of those in the moment sort of situations. And to your point about, your worldview seeps into the art that you make. That's absolutely true. And the crazy thing about this, I know we started off talking about how like the movie isn't really all that woke, which that's true on the surface. 100% agree with that. But at the same time, his messaging and the way in which he's depicting these different layers of the story are 100% through the woke lens.
Right.
And it just seems like he hasn't been able to separate himself like that. And he just keeps doubling down, well, tripling down and quadrupling down.
Yeah.
But it was interesting.
It's almost like the LeBron James effect. You know, you got this black man who's made himself wildly successful in something that he's chosen to take on, yet still is so attached to the idea of racism. Now, I can't speak to his individual experiences. Like, he's been in Hollywood for a really long time. I'm sure there have been instances of racism that he's faced in some way, shape, or form that have probably informed what he says now, but it's very much in that same vein as LeBron James. I mean, we're looking at Jordan Peele. He's an Oscar winner, too. I forgot that point, too, and somebody mentioned that in the comments. In 2018, he got an Oscar for, I think, the screenplay of Get Out, and was nominated for, like, a bunch of other Oscars. I think he was even nominated for Best Picture for that movie.
Yeah, I believe it was, like, original script or original story. Yeah, it was something along those lines. Yeah, it was. He's had success. That's what's so crazy.
Yeah, and I think similar to your point about LeBron James, is no one is questioning Jordan Peele's talent as a director, as a creator. He's clearly extremely talented and a creative genius, and it's fair to say that. And if you just watch it, we just watched this film. I mean, it was really, really well made and really, really creatively expressing what he wants to express. And there are a lot of layers to it that are really great social commentary and commentary on the Hollywood industry, as Scott so eloquently pointed out to us earlier. But it's just the inevitably in your art you're putting forth a message, and with that comes you're subject to criticism. People can critique the message that you're sending, for good or bad, and there's also what you say around it. You know, you are giving context to your art and how it should be interpreted when you're infusing this race narrative into it. So of course we're going to react to that.
Right. And just for context here, so Best Original Screenplay, he won for Get Out, was nominated Best Picture for Black Klansman, nominated Best Picture for Get Out, nominated Best Director for Get Out as well in 2018.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago, it was also a moment where he was very new to the Hollywood scene in directing and writing and producing. And it's, studios aren't going to necessarily hand out $200 million projects to nascent producers and directors. It's just, that's the way it kind of goes. You have to prove yourself, and he obviously has. Right. And that's why he has the budget now.
And his background is comedy too. That's another thing, to be like, my background is comedy, and I know I've proven myself here, but I'd love to do horror. I'd love to do a thriller. And can I get X amount of millions of dollars to produce something like this? It takes a minute. So he's jumped from what you said, like 15 or 16 million on Get Out to 60, which is insane. A huge jump. And when you're worthy of getting. And I think that's the thing about this whole racialized narrative that really gets me, is this idea that you can't prove yourself. And even if there was racism, like, prove people wrong. And he's done exactly that, if that was even the case, which I don't think it is. Like, people were ready to take on his creativity. People were ready to hear what he had to say, and that's proven. And when you have sheer talent, and I know a lot of people say this isn't true, but when you have sheer talent and you really put it in the hustle to really show people what you've created, it shines through.
Yeah, and to your point, no one thinks that Jordan Peele is like an affirmative action director.
No.
Like, they're not giving him money because we just got to give a black guy some money because so he look good. Like, no, he's earned it. And but like you said, there was an incremental process to that, and maybe it makes sense why your first film you don't get this giant budget. That's not because you're oppressed. It's because you just have to prove yourself like anyone else did.
Yeah. So let's keep watching this interview and see what else he has to say about it.
They would trust other people. I felt that was true. And so here I am, Universal Studios, they've proven me wrong.
Good.
A decade ago, a young Jordan Peele, alongside his comedy partner Keegan-Michael Key, kept audiences laughing with their hilarious sketch comedy series, Key and Peele. Today, Peele is one of the hottest directors in Hollywood. He's forged an ongoing partnership with Oscar-winning actor Daniel Kaluuya,
who's great, by the way,
starring in Nope and previously Get Out, Peele's 2017 directorial debut. What is it about working with Daniel that makes it so special?
Daniel, I've said it before, I'll say it again. He's my favorite actor to watch and to work with as well. We have a shorthand that is just the dream as a director. Yeah, man, that's my star.
And while horror is a key component of every Jordan Peele movie, whether it's subtle or overt, the issue of race is always woven into the plot.
I think it's impossible to make any movie without it being about race because, race is all around us.
And there it is. So when you hear something like that, big statement, it's impossible to make any movie without race being a factor in it because we are surrounded by it. It's in all of us. It's in every facet of our life. Now that's an idea that, believe it or not, guys, is backed up by critical race theory. That is, in essence, exactly what critical race theory is. So if you look back into CRT and in the foundations of it from the 1970s with people like Derek Bell being the true foundational critical race theorist, he writes that in every facet of our society, in our lives, race and racism is a factor that we have to take into account, and it's a lens that we have to view the world through. And that's exactly what is expressed here. So when you are listening to the news or CNN, if you guys ever do that anymore, and they talk about critical race theory and they say, well, these things are not being talked about. We're not discussing these things. It's not in film. It's not in media. It's not in schools. It's not in these corporations. This is not critical race theory. Critical race theory is a law theory, is what they will say. Read into the law theory because that's one of the main tenets. You cannot run from it. And although we've stepped out of law and now introduced the idea to film, it's exactly what he just expressed and exactly what he just said. So it's an intellectually dishonest argument to say that this is not, in essence, critical race theory. It's exactly what he just said there.
Yeah, one of the tenets they say is it's not the question of whether racism occurred, it's how did racism occur. And it's a whole worldview where that's baked into it. I'm reminded of an episode we did earlier this week where you reacted to the uncomfortable conversations with the black man, Emmanuel Acho's series. And he, on one of those episodes that we reacted to, he had some interracial couples. And basically they were talking about how happy they were in their interracial relationships, but he kept trying to drag them back into yeah, but isn't there racism factors that go into this? And aren't you being disloyal to your race? And he kept because it was just clear that he sees the world through that lens and cannot escape it. And so everything in his show and everything in his entire worldview, I even leaned over to Amala at the beginning of the movie and I was like, this looks like, or one of the previews that that had some woke stuff in it. I was like, this was this produced by Emmanuel Acho? Because and no knock on him in particular, but just when you have that worldview, it just goes, you cannot see past it.
Yeah,
and
it's everything.
So for him to say race has to be a part of everything that we make. And one last point on this, race was not in a big factor in the making of the movie Top Gun. And it was so, and that I mean, there were diverse characters in it, but that didn't bother anyone because it wasn't this this critique of Western society and how the patriarchy and white supremacy is imposing its norms on us and all this. No, it wasn't any of that. It was just the world has diverse people in it. I've been watching some older, we watched Murder, She Wrote the other night with my wife, and it's just, hey, black characters just characters just happen to be in the movies and in the script and just written in, and it's just because it reflects the world that we live in, and that's what art should do. If unless you have some political messaging, and that's what turns people off.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Because thinking about Top Gun, within the school of Top Gun, you had the best of the best pilots from the Navy, the Air Force coming to this school.
Yep.
And the fact that they didn't even ram that down your throat that these were all different race people. It's oh wait, if you don't even mention it and then you see that they're there at the cream of the crop, it's
they all earned their way there.
Everybody can get there. Everybody can do it as long as they're good, as long as they sharpen their
And that's an
skills.
American idea too.
It's
that's the American dreams. No matter who you are, where you come from, you can achieve and ascend to the top. And Jordan Peele is living out that dream too.
100%, man. And like I said, his commentary about the film spoiled my idea of what the film was going to be. And when you watch Nope, you don't immediately get the taste of, oh, this is extremely racial.
No.
I didn't get that throughout the film really at all, unless you are trying to really take a deep dive into it, to analyze it, that's when the conversations about race start to pop up. But on its face, the film is not something that shoves that down your throat. So to hear him say this beforehand and then go watch the film, it sort of puts a bad taste in your mouth before you've even watched it. And that's a shame, because watching the film, I think it was great. And there's a lot of things we're going to talk about once we get through this last bit of the interview here.
You can't have black people in a flying saucer film and just have it be the same experience.
It's just, you can.
It's not. There's a different relationship. You are a biracial man in America, white mom, black father. And some of the themes that we've seen emerge in your films, it would seem from the outside that worldview informs your movie making in a somewhat pronounced way. Is that accurate? My race, I think, has informed my entire artistic journey. And part of it has been trying to reconcile the box and the boxes that the country puts people of color in.
I would love to hear that fleshed out a little bit more. Like, what is the box that this country puts people of color in? And why are there so many people of color that are completely outside of that box, including yourself, I guess, if that's the statement that you want to make? I'm so confused as to what the box is that people of color are placed in this country. I really don't know.
Yeah, it's weird for a comedian to also say that, because comedians are the ones who push the envelope. They're the ones who step outside that box all the time to see where they can go with their comedic, acts and whatnot. So I don't know. I feel like this is just him trying to grasp at straws, even though he knows deep down that what he's saying, he can't believe what he is saying.
Yeah, but he must, right? Because it's like, I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's like your own life and your own success is evidence against the beliefs that you espouse and and cannot let go of, and yet you're literally living a success that you're claiming cannot be accessed.
But they will say
people.
that it is in spite of. Yeah. I'm succeeding in spite of. But it's like...
but that should bust your narrative, because there's a lot of people who start from the bottom and succeed in spite of huge obstacles in front of them. And that should bust the narrative that there are insurmountable obstacles facing people. I mean, help me understand this worldview.
I know, please.
I don't.
Please, Jordan Peele, please come on the show. I'd love to talk about it more in depth. Let's continue here, and then we'll get to the actual movie itself.
And trying to break out of that box.
Peele has definitely broken out of the box. He gave me a tour of the newest attraction on the Universal Studios Hollywood backlot, a replica of the Nope set. If someone had said to you 10, 15, 20 years ago that Jordan Peele, one of his films would have permanent space here on the lot at Universal, what would you have said?
I'm so oppressed.
I would have said, well, then it would have worked. My plan would have worked.
This is part of the grand plan all along.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if I knew to really dream this big, but I did. I mean, when I first came to Universal Studios as a kid, I was just very enamored with movie making. To have a home on a lot, let alone this lot, is just very special to me.
Pause. Perfect. I think that's what we'll close out on the interview. This is the problem. Here is the problem. I mean, here's why I talk about what I talk about, especially in regard to race. He said, I didn't know to dream that big. I didn't know that I could dream that big. That's the problem. And it's a problem that he's perpetuating by telling people this narrative. Because now you're telling all these other, let's say, young black kids who are watching what you're doing and going, man, I wish I could do that. And then you're going, well, the country's placed you in a box. But we haven't. We really haven't. So you are telling all these other kids, like, you don't need to dream that big because here's what's happening in the country right now, or you need to fight what's happening in the country right now in order for you to dream that big, when that's not the case. And again, it's exactly what happened to me. Like, I went from super angry young person, super angry middle schooler, super angry high schooler, super angry activist who is now getting paid to espouse that narrative because I didn't know you could dream bigger than what people told me was the oppressive America. And how many kids, because of this narrative, are getting robbed of that same exact experience? How many other Jordan Peeles are there out there? How many other creative or athletic or intellectual beings are there out there who are being marred down by this idea that they shouldn't be able to dream that big when it's not. Like, your talent is going to show through, your hustle is going to show through. And so many of the people who are present in this film, let's say Keke Palmer and Daniel Kaluuya themselves, they're just astronomical talent in comparison to other actors and other people in this business shines through because they dared to let it. That's it. All you have to do is take the step and dare yourself to be the person to do it, and you will be the person to do it.
Yeah, he's literally standing outside of the box that he claims all black people in America are put in. And then he's putting the box on everyone by saying, you know, you shouldn't be able to dream, like, to achieve what I achieve, what I'm literally standing here in the middle of my success.
Right.
And they gave him the movie hasn't even come out yet, and they already built a permanent thing at the Universal Studios Hollywood for people to go and experience. Like, they built an homage to your movie before it's even really been publicly received. That's how much you're not in the box of oppression. And yet to stand there and say, you know, in the same breath that, you're achieving all this success, but I shouldn't have dreamed, or I shouldn't have known, but I dreamed, but other people shouldn't that are in the same box as me. It's just, it makes no sense.
It's weird too. Isn't that a universal human hurdle that we all have to get over? Is like trying to dream big enough and shoot for the stars. Like, we're all going through that, every single person. So I mean, not to belittle the race points that you were making earlier. It's just like everyone's going through that thought process and trying to figure it out.
Right. But black people get told it's harder for you. Like, I know we're all on the same page, but it's even harder for you as an individual, which is just sucks, man.
And even if, like, let's say that's true, what's the way out of the box? Is it to stop dreaming? Is it to believe that you can't get out less? Like, you say that it just means, okay, use that as motivation that you can work harder. I mean, I'm not even, that's not my, you know, you could say that it's a very condescending way, but it's like, at the end of the day, the way that, like, things aren't going to be handed to you. And if you play the victim, if you embrace that narrative, it's not going to help you in the end.
Yeah. And I see a lot of people in the chat right now. They're just like, oh, this is a misunderstanding. He's just telling his experience. And I totally get that people are sharing their experience. But your personal experience does not speak to a systemic larger pattern. And that's the issue. You know, like, if you faced racism on your ascension to Hollywood of being one of the most sought after Hollywood directors alive right now, okay, cool. Let's talk about those individual experiences of racism that you face. Let's call those people out. Let's call that to attention. But to then push the narrative that there is a, you know, 1 by 1 square foot box that every single black person is born into in this country, that's the problem, because it's not the truth. And of course there are going to be people who experience racism. Of course, absolutely. I've experienced it. Taylor's experienced it. Scott's experienced it. I'm sure everybody in their life has experienced an instance of racism at some point or another. The issue is when we start pushing a systemic narrative and saying everybody who is within this racial demographic is going to experience it. And I think that's where we end as far as commentary on this, because it, in a lot of ways, and this could just be my fault, but his ideas surrounding race spoiled me, like, starting to watch the film. Eventually that all evaporated as you got farther into the film and you went, oh, okay, this is really not what I thought it was going to be. With Get Out, it was much more clear, sort of the narrative that you were getting as far as it pertained to white versus black, specifically white liberals in a sense versus the black character. Like, we admire blackness in a way, but not in the way that we accept black people for who they are, in the way that we want to appropriate from them. We want to take something from them. We want to take the ability that is distinct to black people, but not attribute it to the blackness. And that was very much the message that you got with Get Out from start to finish in more ways than one, even down to small metaphorical symbolism, like the love interest in the movie separating the colored Fruit Loops from her white milk as she ate them. So it was abundantly clear in Get Out. I feel like with Nope, it wasn't like that as much. For me, Nope seemed to be a commentary more about, like, working class people and lower income people, which I think could have been something we talked about more, although race was injected into it a little bit. And I am going to let Scott sort of take on some of this commentary. He is our film major, our resident film expert here.
And he, like,
he saw through this movie 2020. I got like a little bit. I would say I got like 20%, 20 to 25% of the symbolism.
I got like 5.
Taylor got like 5, and then Scott was like 100%, guns blazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you're 100% right that Get Out was just definitely more in your face, but this was a very heavily layered film. It had so many different pieces of commentary, social commentary pieces that he was trying to hit. You know, you had, I think this is more of an homage to, not to butcher that word or keep using it, but it's an homage to the crews that work on all of these major projects and even small projects in Hollywood. You know, they are the ones who are just worked to the bone. Like, it's unbelievable, the hours. There are reasons why they go on strike, because they're it's almost as though they're in a sweatshop essentially making these things.
Also, spoiler alert, guys, if you are planning on watching the film,
Yes.
Dip out right now.
We're starting to get into the meat.
Yeah.
So it's essentially discussing that whole issue with the working class and giving them some sort of recognition for creating these works of art, or sometimes these flops. But the worst part about it too is like he's showing that those in the crew take on the brunt of those flops too, and it could ruin careers, ruin family legacies or businesses, and really hurt those working class people. It's really as a fan of film, I loved hearing that. Those behind the camera are so important to every single project that's made, and it doesn't come to light unless those people are there and they sacrifice all those hours. I do think that there was a very covert way of infusing the race issues, though, in this one, in a way that was more in your face in Get Out.
And just for your clarity on this, let's give like a quick summary of how the film plays out and what it is really regarding. So you got Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer, who are a brother-sister pair who own a business, and it's a Hayward horse ranch essentially, where they use these horses for films and theme parks and attractions, and they are the horse trainers and wranglers. Now this business was they were running with their father. The father has a demise in the beginning of the film, and it follows Daniel and Keke going through their experience of continuing to run this horse training ranch that goes out to these movies. So the horse ranch is visited by a supernatural alien/animal being that is constantly overseeing everything and has its home in a cloud over their ranch. So it's following Daniel and Keke recognizing this creature, an alien, and sort of trying to get a money shot, a shot of this creature in order to gain a little bit of recognition, maybe some money to continue on their endeavors in life. And so it's all about them learning what this creature is, what it does, what it's after, why it's here, trying to get this shot of the creature. And we have some unlikely characters who join in and are trying to help them out in doing so. And in the background of all that, there is a Western attraction sort of theme park that people are going to. It's a very lowbrow tourist attraction run by an actor by the name of Steven Yeun, and his backstory starts with him being a child actor on a show with a sitcom with an ape that's a character in it, and that ape causes a traumatic event where many of the characters die. Steven Yeun survives while seeing this whole traumatic event play out, and he's now this theme park / tourist attraction director who is sort of stuck in this Hollywood cycle of just trying to entice people with a spectacle. You hear the word spectacle throughout this film quite a bit. And he's also sort of memorialized his experience on that old sitcom with the monkey. He has props and memorabilia from it that he shows people for a fee. And instead of viewing that as a traumatic experience that he went through as a child and going through a healthy process of coming to terms with it, he's sort of selling it out for people to see and experience and creating his own sort of Hollywood spectacle around it. So the film tracks Daniel and Keke recognizing this creature, trying to figure it out, and eventually defeating it. That makes sense. Hopefully that was a good enough
That was
summary.
a good off-the-cuff synopsis.
Well done.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to. Well done. I'm impressed you remembered the actors and actresses' names. I already didn't know in the beginning.
Remember Kiki.
Thank you. Hopefully you guys followed that because it's a lot. It was like a 2.5 hour, I feel like, film that I trying to sum up for you guys.
No, you did a very good job. And
awesome.
And on top of that, talking back to the multi-layered aspects of this film, and the race was kind of snuck in there with the fact that, okay, yes, you're talking about the working class, the crews of these Hollywood actors or of these projects, and it just so happens that the horse business is owned by black people. So it's like a double-edged sword, an attack on the entire Hollywood monster that just eats people up and spits them out, similar to the alien monster.
Right.
And it's very interesting how the alien, depicted. We were talking about it, like the heart or the eye of the alien was very, very similar to the lens of a camera. You know, it represents Hollywood just eating people up and spitting them out like it's nothing. And it was really interesting to see. But that's the crazy thing, is he's so good that he can sneak these covert messages into his story and do it very well, to where you could literally walk away and just be like, oh, that was entertaining. Like, there's nothing.
Which is me. I'm just like, oh, I didn't really catch any of the messaging there, but it was a cool movie about this and that. But as you explain things to me, I'm like, oh, that is a commentary on this and that. And like you talked about the layers of it. It's like this big monster of the machine that represents Hollywood chews up and spits out the cast and crew, but also you could interpret it as black people or minority actors and actresses, and then also like the animals that are used, which then there's truth to all of those critiques, and he's weaving them all together in this one big experience.
I kind of want to speak to how the movie starts, and it starts with a shot of a black horse jockey sitting on a horse, and the horse is galloping, and it's one of the first films that was ever created. And they open by talking about how this black jockey was really never credited for being a person present on one of the first films ever created, and everybody just always talks about the horse. So there's this idea of just black people being exploited, not only in the film industry but just in general, and being sort of pivotal pieces of what are very memorable moments but constantly being forgotten. And that's what happens to the characters throughout the film as they're renting out these horses to different Hollywood projects or different theme parks and things. So many people are just comfortable utilizing their labor, utilizing their time, and then kicking them to the curb when it no longer serves them. There's a scene where Daniel Kaluuya is brought a horse to a Hollywood set, and they're trying to utilize this horse and very much exploiting him. And he tells them all the time, don't look the horse in the eyes, don't bother it, don't get behind it. And they're constantly not listening to him. And eventually the horse bucks, and they go, you know what, we don't want the horse anymore. And as the horse is walking out with Daniel Kaluuya, they walk in this wooden CGI green screen horse that they're going to use for the film. And it very much is saying, we're totally fine with utilizing people for what they can give us. And when they can't give us what we want anymore, we'll switch them out for some sort of inanimate object that's utterly disposable. And that theme comes through a lot, as well as the themes of respect. The whole don't look the horse in the eyes thing comes throughout the film. Daniel Kaluuya, as Scott will say, one of the only people he will look in the eye and give respect to is his sister Keke Palmer, who's also the fellow top black actor in the show, and the alien animal creature that is hovering around and killing all these people is killing people that look it directly in the eye and refuse to look away to show respect. So much of that, I think, is just interwoven throughout, and just like punishing people who look for spectacle more than they're looking for like realness or respecting others.
Yeah, no, you nailed that point. Good job, Al. Really good. Yeah. No, I would add on to that just to kind of piggyback. We were talking about the interesting dynamic between the opening scene of the chimpanzee and what happened on the set, and the fact that, after the chaos and carnage that happens on the scene, you have Steven's character as a child underneath this table shaking in fear. Right. And after the ape finishes his carnage, he comes and fist bumps Steven, which is another thing that we were talking about. Is it's a subtle way to insert this, hey, like, we're ripping the mask or literally the face off of Hollywood, or old Hollywood, where it was prominently controlled and acted by white people, and this champ is what ripped the face off, and it's just like, hey, it's our turn now, kind of, or at least that's kind of the vibe that scene gave off.
Yeah, and to explain that scene a little bit, just to give you some background to it. Like I said, Stephen Yeun, who now runs the theme park as an adult, as a younger child, was a child actor on a sitcom, and it's one of those family haha studio sitcoms that people watch live. And he's got these 2 white parents with a white daughter, and then there's Stephen Yeun, who's this Asian young kid, and a separate character. The main character is this monkey or gorilla, whatever we want to call it, ape, named Gordy. And Gordy is sort of the highlight of the show. Funny, haha, but very much disposable to the directors and the actors and the people who are creating this show for them. And they come together to celebrate Gordy's birthday, which obviously they're not celebrating. They're utilizing this ape for their show to get the ha-has, and then he's back in the cage. And during the filming of this episode, Gordy becomes erratic. He attacks and kills the mother, the father, and rips the face off the young white girl who is the daughter. And Stephen Yeun, the Asian young character, is left unharmed. And throughout the carnage, this monkey's covered in blood. He comes up to Stephen Yeun, as Scott said, and tries to fist bump him, which is something that the character constantly did during the sitcom and was sort of this spectacle that everybody liked to see. And as their fists are just about to touch, animal control comes and shoots the ape in the head, which again is, I think, another tie back to the symbolism of, now that this thing is not doing what I want it to do, it's disposable, let's get rid of it. And the fact that he's an ape, I think, is probably symbolism on race as well. We all know the caricature of black people and comparing them to monkeys and apes and things like that. So I think that's present in the film as well. I also don't think it's just sheer coincidence that the white mother and father were killed and the young white girl was deformed for the rest of her life.
And the same thing happened with the horses, right? Where the white horses were eaten by the monster, and the black one survived. It was called Lucky.
Yeah, the one black horse that survived, his name is Lucky. So there's constant color symbolism in throughout this movie that I think shines through, but you have to think about it enough for it to shine through. On its first watch, if you just left that and didn't have that in the back of your mind as something you were thinking about, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd think about it. I don't think it would ever cross your mind. Yeah,
it kind of crossed mine, but
well, yeah,
but the average guy. Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to say that. In any crazy way,
Scott's
but,
like,
yeah, you're totally right. Like the average viewer, it's an entertaining movie.
Yeah.
Granted, it's an homage to Spielberg and M. Night Shyamalan. But the weird thing is if M. Night had produced this movie, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would be like, that end of the second act and third act kind of unraveled, and it's kind of like it kind of loses its luster. I thought it was a great first act and first half of the second act because, the tension's rising. We're like, what the heck is going on?
Yep.
The sky is utilized so beautifully. The cinematography at night, never seen night shots like that before in my life. It's so gorgeous, but it kind of teeters at the end. And I don't know if Jordan Peele wasn't who he is, or, as prominent as he is right now, I wonder what people would think if, say, like an M. Night Shyamalan, who happens to be technically a minority, would have created this.
Can you explain that a little more, how it's an homage to those two directors? Because when you explained it to me after the movie, it blew my mind.
Yeah. No. So I would say it's an homage to Spielberg in a sense that it harkens back, or it has echoes of Jaws. Because for that first half of the movie, we're so enamored as to what the heck this thing is, because we're only seeing like shadows, flashes in the, and it's very reminiscent of the waters within that movie of Jaws. Like
the ship's like the shark fin in the sky.
Exactly. It's the dorsal fin, and he did a masterful job at utilizing the sky, the clouds, and something we as humans can all relate to, similarly to water and what Spielberg did with water. It's the unknown. We all look up, and we see the clouds, but beyond those clouds, it's a mystery.
Right.
So it was masterfully done in that sense. And I say M. Night because he uses that tension very well and uses these disguises through his dialogue and his cinematography, and it was beautifully done.
Yeah, and there's this idea that I think is becoming more popular in horror movies now, that it's not about gore, it's not about seeing what's scary, it's about thinking that there could be something there that's scary, and that's exactly what was happening in Jaws. Like, you didn't need to see the shark and the blood in the water to know and to feel the fear and suspense of looking at this and not knowing what's coming. It's something that John Krasinski used when he made A Quiet Place. You don't need the scary sounds, you don't need to see the monster itself to know that it's there and to feel an immense fear and just not being able to see it. The Invisible Man does the same thing with horror. So I
J.J. Abrams' Mystery Box, his whole
Right. So this idea of not having to see what's scary in order to feel scared is really super cool. And like, we're talking about this from the political lens and race and everything, but this was a good film.
Yep.
Like, I would recommend that if you have time and if you want to go to the movies, this is something that you should go and see.
Yeah. I agree as well. But I think, to Scott's point a minute ago, that's an interesting thought, is that, like, do you think he falls short of those other directors from a messaging standpoint, because it's not about taking the art form of the mystery to its limit, or to what Spielberg's artful way that he gives you the movie, the classic film experience. For him, it was, do you think he had to like jam that sort of layers of messaging in at the end and tied it up in a certain way that fit the narrative he was trying to push, and that's why it maybe kind of fell off at the end?
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's like having because he had, again, there's so many layers to it, he had to somehow get them all within their own quote unquote character arc and finishing in the right way, and doing that with so many messages, which just, it's difficult to do. Like, only so many people can do it, and they're not able to do it every single time. That's why some movies of theirs are great and others are not. The guy has serious talent. He's just sharpening that sword of talent, if you will. Like, with 3 movies so far under his belt, he's done phenomenally. Though I think this one it's definitely better than Us, story-wise, but it still doesn't touch Get Out as closely.
Right. I what's interesting to me, so there's this constant theme of like people taking advantage of and exploiting natural things, like exploiting animals, exploiting people's need to want to see something that's spectacular, just exploiting this alien in a lot of ways too, to where like the people who die in this film you don't necessarily feel bad for. And what I was interested to see is like, as much as they talk about that and they make it a theme of like, you really don't really feel bad for the people who die in this because of what they're doing, because of what they're exploiting. Aren't Kiki and Daniel doing the same thing by like meeting this creature, and instead of leaving, the place that they're living, going, you know what, no, we're going to get it on film. We're going to get our Oprah moment. We're going to get this caught.
Exploit the exploiter.
Right. But when you're watching the film, it comes off as if it's okay for these 2 characters to do it. It's not okay for any other character to do it.
And that is, what is that? That is a woke CRT worldview. The system has exploited us. The only way to remedy past discrimination is with present discrimination. If that's your worldview, then that, and your view of justice in the world is, no, it's not that we get to the place of neutrality where principles of justice and truth stand on their own and now we're all subject to them and they govern us. No, it's you had the power and now I'm taking the power back, and taking
advantage. Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's a great point bringing that up, because I didn't even think about that. But it was something in, I don't know if you ever saw The Power of the Dog.
No, I haven't.
It's a very similar message where a young homosexual character within that essentially was the champion, and he took out the toxic masculine man who had homosexual undercurrents and like hidden life. But we replaced that quote unquote toxic masculinity with deceptive murder.
Right.
And we're supposed to feel good about that and be like, oh, this is the hero. And I mean, this movie didn't show that to that degree, but it's totally, you hit the nail on the head.
It's something you feel good that they're doing what they're doing. And whereas when you watch other people do it, you're like, oh, well, they can die and I don't really care.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
Yeah, again, that's just that's a worldview that's not based on principles that exist outside of who's in power at the given moment.
Yeah.
And it's based on, no, I was done wrong, and vengeance is mine. I will repay.
Right.
One other quick, I saw in the chat here, Eddie said, will I go see a movie made by a CRT director? Nope. But to be fair, I mean, that is a fair way to view it. If you hear the stuff that he's saying in these interviews, and it puts you off, and going into it that even if you might not be able to spot it on the surface, that there's some messaging in there, I think that's within your right to not support something that and on the flip side, leftists don't like to go to Chick-fil-A, even though the chicken might be great and they might enjoy it, but they don't like the owner's stances on gay marriage or whatever it may be. And if that's the message that you want to send to them and vote with your wallet in that way, that's fair game. That's not cancel culture. That's just, I mean, it can descend into that. Right. But anyway, I just thought that was an interesting point. I would say don't go if that's the message you want to send. You don't have to support it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we all, there are times when I can separate art from artist while still like analyzing and doing that. And you make that personal decision. Right. Like there are companies that will do certain things and I'm like, oh, I'm not going to support that company anymore. And there are artists that will say certain things or do certain things and I'm like, I'm not going to support them anymore. And there are artists that I can support. I'm not going to stop listening to Joni Mitchell because she took her stuff off of Spotify and despite Joe Rogan. I think we all make our personal decisions.
I never was listening to Joni Mitchell, but it's fine.
I think we all make our personal decisions like based on the situation at hand. And I'm more than happy to go and watch something like this. And I admire like this was good. I don't want to make it sound like this movie was bad. The movie was good. I particularly liked one of these characters that we didn't even speak about, but he works at sort of like a video tech store.
He was cool.
And they meet him to buy security cameras to catch footage of this UFO. And he suddenly invests himself in this situation because he's invested in, the conspiracy of UFOs being real and the government lying about it, or at least trying to keep information from us. So I was like,
he was like Hispanic or whatever. So I feel like he was like untouched by any like racial undertones to his role.
Right.
So he was just kind of like this lovable guy that was just there.
He was just based.
And you didn't like the photographer or director guy. It was a weird character.
There's a character that pops up, I think, purely for the sake. This is just my opinion. I think it's Jordan Peele like putting his essence into a character a little bit of like, as a creative person and as a director, I am going to get the perfect shot for my perfect movie. There is not going to be a stone left unturned. There's not going to be any plot holes, and everything is going to mean something. And there's a director that sort of pops up because Keke Palmer calls him and says, we got to get footage of this alien. You're going to want to see it. You're going to want to see it. This is our move to the top. And he's like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think you're just pulling my leg here. And eventually he gets invested, and he gets so invested that when the alien does appear, even though they've basically got a shot of it, like they have enough to say, I have proof of this. He's like, it's not enough. I want to.
The lighting's perfect.
The lighting's perfect. I want to get the magic, impossible shot, and he dies trying to get that shot. The alien kills him.
Yeah, that's definitely a tip of the cap to all artists out there willing to die for their their baby, which is the project or their film. And it was interesting. Like I personally didn't hate it, but it was also blown up, like his speech and everything.
Yeah, his voice and stuff was irksome. I like when you explain it like that. It's like it's a cool thing and it's an interesting wrinkle to put in there as like a little tip of the cap to artists. But the way they put his character, his
he was
voice
unlikable.
Was actually, I'm reminded of the Key and Peele has a skit where Jordan Peele plays a retired soldier or something, and they're like trying to get him to come out of retirement. He's like, no, I'm retired. Like, this guy reminds me of that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Literally, he only speaks in metaphors and is like super gruff. Every word is at least 5 syllables or more type of character.
Another layer to it, also adding him in there, is it's another tip to the cap to old school Hollywood with the old camera that wasn't mechanical, it wasn't powered by electricity, and he kind of represented that old, call it pure art that was being made back in the day, as opposed to these days that it's just so CGI'd, it's so over the top. Everything's, I mean, I don't hate him, but everything's a Michael Bay kind of movie, spectacle, as the word was tossed around multiple times. So it's Jordan was definitely adding his artistic flair to this, and it was interesting because those layers, it hits a chord for so many people in the filmmaking industry and just artistry abroad. So yeah, it's hard to hate this one.
No, it is hard to hate it. And if you go into this movie thinking about like lower class, lower income people and people who maybe are extremely creative and powerful and have like a great personality and energy about them, but just simply don't have the means to express that or to become what they're meant to become, beautiful film. And you can see that. I mean, I'll be the first to step up and say, yeah, there's so many working class people who are exploited day in and day out for what it is that they can give, and they're never truly compensated for what they've given, for the artistry that they've created, and they're seen as disposable, which is in so many ways wrong, in so many ways needs to be fixed. And if you go into this film like thinking in that way and watching it in that way, it's super powerful, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you broaden the critique to society at large, and like, yeah, Hollywood chews people up and spits people out, but yeah, society, the world does, and it's not always a fair place, and there are racial dynamics to that. There are class dynamics to that, and that it is a fair critique in that sense. But the question is, again, like we said before, like how are you resolving that conflict, or what is your vision for the future of how things are supposed to be remediated? And the thing that the way that he wrapped that up was this sort of vengeful, let's flip the script and let the low class people be the ones in control, and they do the exploiting now. And like that's the part of the messaging that I'm like, can't sign off on.
Yeah. The have-nots will now have.
And that's very much like a subtext. You could say we're reading that into it a little bit, but it's there.
You watch it and you tell us.
Yeah.
You watch it and you tell us, because it is the opening weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And I do encourage you to watch it if you want to. If you don't want to support him, then that's a total another thing. It is money in his pocket. But yeah, I think the best thing that can be done is to just keep creating, keep making films like this, and just prove yourself. And he has proven himself. And that's the best thing you could do for any young black kid anywhere who's thinking, oh, I can't, or I'm a have-not in this life because I've been born here in America, which try being born in any other country as a black person and see who's truly a have-not, which doesn't mean there's not progress to be made here. But I really do think it's important how you talk about modern America. Like, I think it's wonderful that he spoke about the black horse jockey who is in this film, whether or not it's true or not, but there's so many instances of black people in the past being utilized in Hollywood and not credited and never talked about and never being given what they were due. So that's a wonderful conversation to have. Historical conversations are wonderful conversations to have, and present conversations are wonderful conversations to have, so long as the lighting's right, and you're actually giving a fair shake to what is possible and what people are capable of. That's my problem. Yeah. Anything else? Any other closing notes before we close out today's show on Nope by Jordan Peele?
Nope. I think I've said everything I had to say.
Yeah, no. The movie's great. Keeps you on the edge of your seat at times, is funny at times. Thought I was going to cry. Did not cry, but I almost did cry, and I'm just gonna do this, and then you'll know if you go and watch the movie what moment I almost cried at. And that's it. So I think it was an all-encompassing good experience, and something that even if you disagree with will spark conversation. And that's
As all good art should.
Yeah. So out of 10, what are we rating this film, guys? And if you guys want this to be a recurring series, let us know, where we go and watch these films as they come out and give you an episode the day of or the next day where we talk about what we saw. Yeah. What out of 10? What are you giving it?
I don't know. 6.5.
6.5?
It's hard for me to go higher than that, just because the subtext just kills it for me. And like, I think at the end of the day, the message you're putting out there is not one that I think is good for the world. But overall, the way the film is made, the creativity, the artfulness, all that is off the charts. And so in that sense, I'll give that a 9, but so it averages out.
There you go.
Yeah, 6.5.
Yeah. I would say on the woke meter, it's 5.5, 6, because it's all kind of covert stuff. But on the artistic side, shooting was amazing. I would give that obviously a 9-10. Story 7. So in total, Let's call it a 7.
Okay, yeah, let's do it that way. Let's woke meter. I give it a 4.5 maybe. On cinematography, 9. Really, really great. And storyline and just the whole watch through, 7.5.
Boom.
There we go.
Okay.
Boom.
Yeah. So you guys go and watch the film if you want to. Let us know how you feel about it and give us your 3 scores. How was it on wokeness? How was it on cinematography? How was it on plot and just overall storyline? Let us know in the comments down below. And yeah, hopefully, I'm sure a lot of people are going to look this up because it's opening weekend and they just want to see general reviews. So maybe we'll get some left-leaning people who go out and watch this video and give us their perspective on that. So if you disagree with anything that we said, write that in the comments down below. If you agree, leave it in the comments down below. If there's something that we left out, leave that in the comments down below, and of course give us your 3 scorings for the movie itself. Guys, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we go live and every single time we put out a video so that you are right there front and center when we're talking to you about hot topics. And if you'd like to listen to this podcast, go to Google Play, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic weekend. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.